We'll be showing you the three sets for women. The first set is the tricep. So Katie, please turn around. Ask the client to hold their arm at a 90-degree angle, and then measure in centimeters from the acromion profit down to the elbow. Katie is 35 centimeters long, and you want to make a mark at the halfway point. Now this is a vertical test, so you want to make your arm vertical and then cross it horizontally to mark your spot for testing. Go ahead and relax. And our second test site will be the abdominal. Again, measuring in centimeters, and on the same side of the body, mark 2 centimeters out from the belly. The last set of testing is the suprailiac. You'll find the natural line of the iliac bone and go just superior to that and make a line in the direction of the bone, so it's a diagonal test. Now for the actual testing, you want to make sure your client is relaxed. For review major marking, you're going to pull the skin out just a little. Try separating the fat from the muscle. Take the skin caliper and place it at the base of what you've pulled out. Let it sit for a second before you take your reading. The numbers on the dial, and then press the button and take it away. Next, you'll ask the client to turn around and continue on the next two sets. Again, a couple pinches, pull the skin out, open the caliper, place it at the base, take your reading, open it again, take it away from the client. They'll do each site 3 times, rotating between the 3. Make sure you don't do all 3 at one site at one time. Again, the 3 testing sites on women is the tricep, the abdominal, and the suprailiac.
All right, so I just wanted you to see what the skin fold test is. That is where they're measuring. So if you want to reduce the amount of skin around your waist, around your arms, around your shoulders, I just showed you some very impressive results of Guggul steroids in an herbal remedy. That was just at 50 milligrams of this stuff. In CardioFlow is 300 milligrams per dose. And it's even more effective, and it's dose dependent. The higher the dose, the better the effects. All right, so here's the effect of those tablets that include Guggul steroid on CRP. This is that C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker, 4.6 down to 3.5 over a 3-month period of taking it and an extra month off. All right, so here's the discussion that the researchers using this remedy for obesity, we observed that this remedy, including Guggul steroid, significantly reduced the circumference measurements and skin fold thickness, though it did not show any statistical or clinical significant change in weight and corresponding BMI, but all of those were improved. It is, however, interesting to note that this formula did not allow further increase in any of those parameters in anybody. So they didn't see increase in weight. They didn't see increase in BMI. It either stayed steady and went down, and then they saw significant numbers in the skin fold test and circumference measurements of the neck, waist, and shoulders. This study formulation had ingredients other than triphala, such as Guggul and this Garcinia, which may have affected its overall efficacy. And then they write this, because it wasn't just Guggul. There are 9 clinical studies available on Guggul, Guggul, supporting its anti-obesity and anti-cholesterol activity all by itself. In our study, it was observed, they said, the decrease in circumference measurements. The participants in the studies, both male and females, had elevated baseline neck circumference values, and afterwards interventions, a significant decrease was seen. Skin fold thickness, which is a very specific and sensitive predictor for obesity, they saw a significant reduction in the thickness of these 2 skin folds along with triceps and the waistline in all participants. Not just in some, in all of them. Now let's look at the Guggul steroid isolated by itself in a high-fat diet in animal studies, particularly diabetic rats, which if it's a diabetic rat, it's the same for diabetic humans. 2 Guggul steroid isotopes called E and Z are the most important constituents studied in detail for their therapeutic potential from the tree, abbreviated C. mucul, which I showed at the beginning of this presentation. Various studies have been conducted to understand and illustrate the mechanism at which the action and potential of Guggul steroid as a therapeutic agent using these 2 forms of Guggul steroids. The aim of this study was to find out what is its lowering blood sugar and lowering blood fats called lipids and cholesterol. What is the nature of Guggul steroid's ability to do that in type 2 diabetic animals, particularly rats? On the basis of results obtained from a broad range of experiments, it is evident that glucosterone is not only effective at lipid-lowering agent, cholesterol-lowering agent, but at the same time has the ability to combat different targets of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Insulin resistance is typically in a type 2 diabetic. They have high amounts of insulin or normal amounts of insulin, but the insulin's not breaking down blood sugar. Guggul helps to reverse that. Experiments were carried out on pathogen-free, so no viruses, bacteria, fungi, or parasites, male Wistar rats of age 3 to 4 weeks. These were the 4 groups of animals as they divided them. Group 1 had a normal pellet diet. Group 2 had a high-fat diet, and they were diabetic. Group 3 were high-fat diet-fed rats, so they're diabetic, and they were treated with 75 milligrams per 2.2 pounds of body weight of glucosterone. The treatment group in this study is those given glucosterone alone, and they're diabetics. Group 4 had a high-fat diet, fed rats treated with only 20 milligrams of a diabetes drug called metformin, and many of y'all know what metformin is. So you have normal rats being fed a normal diet, then you have a group 2 is high-fat diet, who are now diabetes confirmed rats. Then they took diabetes confirmed rats. They gave them group 3 glucosterones. Group 4, they gave them metformin, a diabetes drug. At the bottom, you'll see groups 3 and 4 were gavaged with or given glucosterones and metformin respectively for another 8 weeks. Rats from groups 1 and 2 received normal salt water called saline as their control substance. They weren't given glucosterones or metformin. This is what they found. The effects of glucosterone and metformin alone, we're looking at glucosterones, fasting blood sugar glucose, and glucose tolerance test. 2 things every diabetes doctor and diabetes patients pay attention to. Fasting blood glucose and glucose tolerance test were determined after 8 weeks of treatment with glucosterone. On completion of the 8 weeks of treatment, glucose tolerance test was performed by oral administration of glucose load. They gave them just sugar of 1 gram per kilogram of body weight in water to overnight fasted animals. Blood samples were collected from the tail vein at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120, and 150 minutes. They didn't wait days after giving them glucosterone. They wanted to know how fast, within minutes, does this lower their blood sugar. The effects on fasting glucose level and glucose tolerance. Rats fed with high-fat diet showed high level of fasting blood sugar in comparison to the control. So that would be group 2 compared to group 1 and the treated counterparts. However, this level, blood glucose level and glucose tolerance test, was reduced down close to that of the control rat, the rats that didn't have diabetes, with just the 75 milligrams of for every 2.2 pounds of body weight of the glucosterone group. So when they gave the group of diabetes rats just glucosterone, their blood sugar and their glucose tolerance almost was identical as the normal animals that don't have diabetes. They almost made them look completely normal and not diabetic just with glucosterones. This is the chart out of the research study. Look at blood glucose levels as the measurement on the left. Time is at the bottom. So you'll see FBG stands for fasting blood glucose. Then you'll see they took the blood at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120, and 150 minutes. Now look at what they're testing. Look at the line graphs. This is the blood sugar level for every minute for the diabetes animals. Line A. This is the glucosterone levels. Look at how fast it drops within 30, 60, 90, 120 minutes, 150 minutes. And this is the metformin group. Look at how almost identical the metformin and the glucosterones levels are. I think that's amazing. And glucosterones doesn't have any of the toxic side effects that metformin does. Here's a bar graph representing the same info. You see the blood sugar levels of the diabetes animals. The treated group is the glucosterone group and the metformin group. Now let's look at the insulin levels, because insulin's important in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Type 1, they don't make enough insulin. Type 2, they are making insulin, but it ain't working. The animals fed the high-fat diet resulted in almost 2.5 increase in plasma insulin levels as compared to the normal animals. However, on treatment with glucosterone, the diabetic rats showed a marked decrease in that insulin level, which would be beneficial for type 2 diabetics, as compared to the untreated diabetic group. And here you'll see it. This is the insulin levels for, look at the diabetic group. Their insulin levels was at 8.3 compared to the normal rats. When they gave them glucosterone, it almost went back down to normal to 4.5. The drug called metformin, it went to 4.1. You're still in the same range as the glucosterone alone. This is where it gets really exciting for me. Everyone has been told that fats are bad for you and statin drugs are needed. And I promise you, the majority of the people listening to this have a loved one or themselves have been told they need to get on a statin drug to lower their cholesterol. I'm about to show you that glucosterones alone is either as effective or even more effective than every single statin drug out there. Here's the effects of glucosterone on plasma lipid profile. Lipid means fats. Cholesterol is a fat. Treatment with glucosterone showed significant improvement in lipid profile. The level of harmful lipids like TC, LDL, which is called bad cholesterol, TC is total cholesterol, VLDL cholesterol, and TG were significantly reduced. In addition, HDL levels, which is your good cholesterol level, was found to be increased by 43%. This is massive. You'll see this one typically on a blood panel as HDL, they want it above 50. And most people don't have it above 50. This is the good cholesterol, supposedly. This increased it by 43% in just a few weeks, glucosterone by itself. So here are the different plasma levels in the blood of different lipids after the administration of glucosterone. You'll see the control animals. So think of a normal human that doesn't have diabetes. Then you see the total cholesterol levels of the diabetic rats. The normal rats, normal humans, was 154. When they made them diabetic rats by feeding them a high-fat diet, whatever it was they gave them, their cholesterol levels total was 220. When they gave the rats that were diabetics glucosterones, their cholesterol level total went down to 166. Not too far off the control or normal animals. Look at metformin, the diabetes drug. It brought it down to 173. Well, that's not 166. Glucosterones outperformed metformin in its ability to improve cholesterol levels. HDL cholesterol for the treated group was 40, but look at the diabetic rats. It was 28.5. The higher, the better. Metformin had it at 45, which means it was better than the glucosterones, but not far better. And then LDL cholesterol, that's what they call the bad cholesterol, even though it's not bad for you, but they call it bad. You'll see in the diabetic group, it's at 112. Look at after using glucosterones alone, it dropped to 83, which was better than metformin. Glucosterones outperform metformin at lowering total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. And then you're going to get to total glucose, 210, 190 for the metformin. But look at the diabetic rats. It was at 398. Glucosterones dropped it to 210. Isn't that amazing? And sorry, I said total glucose. TG stands for triglycerides. So do you know anybody with high triglycerides? Look at what glucosterones alone did. It dropped it from 398 in a diabetic rat down to 210. That's almost by half. Metformin actually did drop it by half to 190, but glucosterones alone did it. Now, this substance called G6P-ACE is an important target for anti-diabetic agents, drugs, as its activity increases due to type 2 diabetes conditions. Treatment with glucosterone resulted in a significant reduction of 22% in this substance's activity in this study. Insulin resistance, which is type 2 diabetes issues, is a causal factor of slow systemic blood glucose clearance and a defect in what's called GLUT4 expression. In our study, we're just talking about insulin resistance. In our study, also expression of GLUT4 was significantly low in adipocyte fat cells and muscle tissues of diabetes animals as compared to the controls. And the treatment group with glucosterone resulted in a profound increase in its expression, which helps you to improve insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. In kidneys, the treated rats demonstrated a clear reduction in the expression of aldose reductase, which is an enzyme which is responsible for diabetes-related complications. Everyone should know that diabetics have kidney failure as a long-term side effect. Glucosterones reduces aldose reductase, which contributes to kidney dysfunction and disease. for diabetes.